Hi, I'm Amy Zielinski.
And I'm Raven Smith.
Thanks for joining us here with Experiencing Oneness Through the Heart. We're really, really excited to share with you today a little bit about our own heart journeys and to open up a dialogue where we're all sharing together our heart journey.
Yes, it's really exciting for us because we're in the midst of our own opening with one another and just within life in general. And we're very enthusiastic about getting a chance to share with other people. And we really mean share. We mean we want to engage with other people around this feeling sense of opening from the heart, of really connecting into oneness and unity, and doing that as a real experience with one another. And so we're very excited to begin this process of sharing this with this video and just to talk a little bit about what it's like, what it's been like for us on our own journeys and coming from the heart and getting back in touch with our heart, and really opening up a doorway for you to share with us as well.
Just like your heart, your physical heart is an organ at the very center of your physical body. Your heart essence, is at the center of everything that you are and everything you experience in the world. Ever since you were first conceived, your heart began developed its own unique heartbeats. You have your own electromagnetic kind of code that can be registered outside of your body, which to me is a really cool thing. So each of you has a really unique experience with your heart. This journey, though, doesn't just include you. Because your heart is an organ, physiologically, that sends off electromagnetic waves, it actually can be felt outside of your body. So when you go to have your heart tested, we don't have to cut into you at all. On top of your skin can be read what your heart's doing. And in fact, we now have instruments that can read your heart and its electromagnetic emissions up to 3 feet away. And I have no doubt that in the future they'll be able to read your heart and what it's producing even farther away than that. So what does that mean? That means that your heart is constantly transmitting information out into the world. At the same time, it's also receiving information. So that every interaction you have with another human, with the land on which you walk, with plants, with any other beings, is actually a meeting of heart vibrations.
I think it's really cool. We're going to talk about this some more, but that we really are perceiving so much of the world from our heart. And I know that we've all really experienced this with other people. You know, we can tell each other's emotional responses. We can tell a lot about when we're interacting with one another. So much of the communication that we're having with one another is not just about the words. It's about the feeling senses and the way that those feelings, where those feelings are originating in terms of perception and in terms of expression is coming from the heart.
Mm-hmm. And we use it in language all the time. We say, I feel your heart, or I don't feel your heart. But what Raven and I are really interested in is consciously becoming aware of these interactions. What is my heart doing, and how is it perceiving these other beings? How is my heart's vibration interacting with someone else's?
Yeah, and not just people, but also with everything. How are we feeling those vibrations from the world around us, and what are we putting out into the world around us as we move through it from that whole center of ourself?
We both come from spiritual practices and traditions that talk a lot about oneness. Mm-hmm. And for me, that connecting with all that is, that merging, that being, acknowledging and being part of the oneness, for me that's centered in the heart. That's where I actually begin to release all of the separation and swim in that place of oneness.
Mm-hmm. It's my feeling that if we're really going to come to a place where we can practice oneness, because we're already one. It's not like, there's something we need to do to become one with everything. We're already one with everything, but we're not attending to it that way, and so we're not experiencing the world that way. And so when we can consciously bring our awareness to that oneness, you know. And so it greatly enhances our experience of it. It becomes our experience of it instead of something that's true that we can't really acknowledge in our own being. You know? And so a step in this direction that we found is really being conscious of the heart and really being conscious of how the heart is connecting with the world around us.
But as Raven said, we're all one, and that there's nothing that ever stops that. It's our experience of it that stops, and that experience is mostly in our mind. So what's been really helpful for both of us, I know, is to go back and take stock of our heart journey and look really from childhood on to see the places where you actually acted with the knowledge, where you actually experienced oneness. What were you doing with your heart? And to also notice times in your lives where you weren't open to experiencing the world through your heart. That didn't change the oneness, it changed your experience of it.
And I know for myself, also talking about other people, specifically talking about Amy, about unity and oneness, is a great way to kind of point the way and help us sort, you know, help use one another to calibrate and kind of point the direction for different things that we might be able, different directions we might be able to go deeper into our own experience with our heart. You know, and sometimes hearing the similarities and the differences in the journey that we each have with our feeling sense of the world, our heart sense of the world, can really help us to begin exploring more deeply and more widely what things might be possible for us.
So we invite you to explore your own heart journey and to share that with others, hopefully us. So that you're experiencing more of the oneness that you already are.
So we all have really different journeys with our heart paths, and Amy's is a truly incredible one. And we're going to start with that just so that we can really kind of get a sense of different ways that our journeys can happen through our lifetime as we learn to open more fully through our heart. So Amy, will you tell us about your amazing journey with your heart?
Sure. 13 years ago, I woke up one day in a hospital bed, in the ICU unit. I had just gone through emergency surgery for my heart and lungs. I developed a condition that necessitated emergency surgery. And when I was coming out of anesthesia, I had a very unusual series of dreams. These weren't my dreams. As those of you who know, who have been through major surgery, you come out and often don't have dreams for quite some time. I came out and didn't have my own dreams. I had dreams that I can only describe as belonging to someone else, and I knew immediately that they were not mine. But these were memory dreams. They felt exactly like my memory dreams did, but I knew they weren't mine. And what was fascinating is that they were all very sensory. So in these dreams, I walked around a home that I had never been in before, but I knew it intimately. I knew where to navigate to go where I was supposed to go. It was almost as though I was being shown something. And I could actually feel through the bottoms of my feet the carpet of this home. It was very, very tactile. I knew what the carpet felt like. But when I woke, I knew that I had never been on that carpet. Yet the strength of that experience was still there in my feet. And these dream sequences continued, and all of them were very sensory. I could smell what I was being shown. I obviously saw things. Everything was very, very sensory, and it felt so real and as though it had happened, just not to me. At the time, I didn't know exactly what was used during my heart and lung surgery, but I started to wonder if perhaps I had been given a little gift from someone else. And indeed, when my surgeon came in to describe the surgery to me, that's what he said. I had been given a little graft, a little piece of someone else's heart in my heart. And I had read enough to know, as most of you probably have, that people who have transplants of organs and even tissue have these similar experiences. They might have cravings for a kind of food that they've never liked before. So I thought, perhaps this person whose name I could not know, I could not find out this person's name, perhaps this person had left me memories as well as his body part. And so I decided to work with this, and I eventually was able to learn so much about this person because of these dreams I was having. They were almost like a scrapbook of this person's life, and I was being taken through his life. His name's Michael. And every single part of these was very vibrant and real to me, as though they were mine, because in fact they were stored in this part of this person's heart, which was now part of me. Lots and lots of research now is catching up with all the anecdotal evidence we've had for a few decades, ever since transplants began, and that is that the heart itself is a perceptual organ that actually records sensory information. So these memories, these sensory memories, these experiences that Michael had, were stored in this teeny tiny little bit of tissue and organ that was put in my body, and they were then given to me. Well, eventually, I became coherent enough to really think about the implications of that. If this tiny part of someone's heart, long after he had passed away, could still be giving off information of experiences that he had in his lifetime, what does my entire heart record every single day? At this point, I really started paying attention to the relationship between my heart, my senses, and my interaction with the world. And I started to really realize that everything that I take in through my senses, each of my senses, is actually being taken into my heart. It's almost like our hearts have their own eyes and ears and skin. This was revolutionary to me. Although my whole life I've been called all sorts of things like tender-hearted, any of those words that connote very sensitive and connected to one's heart. Those are all true, but I never really paid attention to how, in fact, I was tender-hearted, how I used my heart to connect with the rest of the world. And so 13 years ago, this gift of a little body part was really a much bigger gift, because it allowed me not only to live physically, it did that for sure, but it allowed me to consciously live in a new way, to connect with awareness with my world through my heart. Each of us has an incredibly intimate journey with our own heart. They're all unique, and they're all wonderful. You don't have to have somebody else's little body part put inside of you to be able to experience your own heart and to be able to connect with all that is through your heart. Raven has a very different experience with his heart, and he's going to share it with you now.
So my own journey began with my heart when I started really taking on a spiritual path, when my journey moved to really deepening my own spiritual path. I met a teacher and I started doing a lot of meditation and a lot of yoga and really working to unwind a lot of my unconsciousness. And the methods that were available to me while I was doing this were very disciplined. So I led a very aesthetic lifestyle and practiced a lot of physical disciplines as part of my journey. And I also sat in meditation in the Zen kind of style, where you do a lot of sitting to try and quiet the mind. And over the course of that time, I really created an enormous amount of transformation in my life. So everything changed for me, and my life really began to deepen and take on real meaning for the first time. But as the years, literally years went by with this, I wound up moving to California, and over the course of my journey, what I discovered as I started to take the next steps was that while my life was much more in integrity and much more conscious and aware, there wasn't a whole lot of joy in it. There wasn't very much opening in it. I had kind of ground down around the spiritual disciplines and created somewhat of a flat experience of my life. And I began a new type of meditation, a new type of work where I was really focused on the senses. And as I began doing sensory walks to really as a different type of meditation and opening from the senses, I was simultaneously really noticing that my heart was very walled off, was very contracted, and I started opening up this part of my being and at the same time opening the senses. And again, over some time, some years of doing this type of meditation and this type of work, things became much more focused for me on opening into life rather than contracting and closing around discipline. And in my meditation practice, what started to happen, and it's only just recently when I've been talking to Amy that I've really been able to bring a lot of this into focus, is that it went from the overall senses that we're focusing on when we do this type of meditation became a perceptual net of experience that was much broader. And what I didn't notice it as all that well because I was also in the process of opening my heart, that I didn't notice how closely those things were actually tied together. And so what I've realized now and what I've been practicing of late is really noticing that perceptual net as we come through the senses and take in information about our world all around us is actually coming in to the heart. And that the heart is the center of our perception. That each of our senses, we tend to focus on a sense and we think it's something about the mind. But if we really notice what is doing the perceiving of the sense, our center of perception is the heart. And it just dovetails so beautifully with trying to open, with working on opening into life rather than contracting or pulling away or trying to transcend, but instead really coming back into a place where we're opening to our experience from the heart. And noticing that it is this sense of feeling and love and joy and beauty of the world that is what deepens us spiritually, that is what opens us into the divine. So it's an amazing thing just to bring our attention back to the heart and to begin to come from that in everything that we do.
Thank you so much for sharing this space with us, for listening to our heart journeys. It really means a lot to us that you've spent time with us in our hearts today.
Yes. And we just wanted to revisit the intent of this was to share and to start to open up a dialogue. And so in service to that, we've set up a Facebook page, a Divine Union Facebook page, for all of us to begin sharing a little bit more of our heart's journey and doing what we were talking about earlier with the calibration and the direction pointing, so that we can get information from one another and begin to really deepen our communication with one another by talking about what's really in our hearts at all levels.
And this offering comes with a blessing. May we each get to know ourselves and our heart's journey a little more deeply. May we connect with our heart and through our heart with all that is, with other beings, with the land, with plants, with animals, with other humans. May all beings know their own heart essence, and through it, that we are all one.
Beautiful. And just to really bring that recognition to we are one, so that all beings in all times and all places benefit from your experience, from my experience, from our experience.